much. Okay, I think we begin now with Victoria. Ms. Losey, the next question, one more finance question. Do you consider the PVE annual budget to be balanced when it annually underpays the CalPERS obligation and borrows additional funds from the city reserves?
Oh boy, that's a big one. Okay. So it's balanced. This is a hard one. So the city budget is balanced on an operating basis for the money that comes in. We spend the money, but we have to take from reserves when we want to contribute to infrastructure spending. Something's buzzing. Are you guys hearing? Oh, is that your phone? I'm sorry, that's Betty's watch buzzing away. Oh, it's your phone? No? No, it's my sister. Okay, sorry, so sorry. So do I consider the budget balanced? I think we have an operating, we balance, the general fund is balanced. That's like our checking account. So we put the money in, we spend money, but when we run out of money in the general fund, we have to take from our reserve funds to pay for things like infrastructure, capital spending, other funds for equipment replacement. So from that perspective, we take out of our savings to put into our checking account. So I don't call that balanced at the end of the day.
Mr. Camps.
Two issues in addition to what Victoria just said. If you think about your home life, you have a checking account and a savings account, and when one gets drained and one runs out, and you're transferring back and forth to Rob, Peter versus Paul, is that a balanced budget? No. On top of it, we have accruing long-term pension liabilities, which in fact turns into debt. We're not paying it off every year. It's growing at a rate of over 7%, and we do not have a balanced budget.
Ms. King?
Government accounting is very tricky. It's based on fund accounting. So yes, we do have a balanced operating budget every year. We don't take money from reserves to pay for other things. We take them from accounts that are earmarked for that particular purpose. So if we're doing a sewer project, we take it from the sewer fund. Those funds can't be used for anything else except that project. If we're doing a capital project, we take it from the capital fund. If we're replacing equipment, we take it from the equipment replacement fund. So we're not taking it from reserves. The reserves that we were talking about earlier are a completely separate fund, and the only time that we have had to go into reserves is the year that Measure D failed. And at that point, even though we lost $5 million, we only took $1.2 million from our reserves. In terms of our pension liability, again, that liability is growing at an exponential rate, thanks in large part to CalPERS that has taken their investment losses and foisted them on all their member cities. Again, I'm hoping that we can, in our next budget, allocate some money to pay down that unfunded liability.
Thank you. Mr. McGowan.
I'm not going to repeat what everyone else has just said about the balanced budget, but I will just cite a couple of statistics for you. Our overall fund balances, all the assets of the city has declined 25% in the last 6 years. What concerns me the most is that we are not generating enough surpluses in our operating fund in order to properly fund our capital improvement reserve fund. Our capital reserve fund is projected to be at $1.7 million 5 months from today, at the end of June 30th. We spend $2.5 to $3 million annually on maintenance and capital improvements out of that fund. We don't have enough resources where our revenues and exceed our expenses in order to properly fund that or do any type of pay down on unaccrued liabilities.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy.
Yes, you know, for intent and purposes of this budget, I believe the budget is balanced. But there's some concerns with the current budget balance. We only pay the minimum into our pension deficit. We didn't put any funds towards the capital improvements, and there are no funds towards equipment and replacement. So although this budget appears balanced to me, going forward, I think we're going to have some issues, like my colleague said, because we're not filling those other terms.
Okay, going on to a more personal question, if you will.
I don't think Betty.
Betty got.
Oh, I'm sorry, Betty. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. So as far as the balanced budget, you know, as long as we're making more revenue than we're expensing, we're considered balanced. But however, you know, it is true that we don't have as much money to put into our infrastructure improvements. We don't have enough money to look forward in the long term. I think those are very important things to consider. As long as we can pay for our expense, our daily operations, to me, it's not robbing Peter to pay Paul, because at the end of the day, those are all still city's money. Having a long-term projection, like I said, is still important. The only time we actually tapped money out of the reserves was when we lost Measure D. And luckily we had Measure E, or else we would have lost another $5 million and another $5 million. So it's good that we have 50% for a rainy day like that. But as far as the balance is concerned in governmental accounting, we are balanced.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.